Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. This time we're going to do a deep dive on Tabyeen, the Neglected Obligation, a book by Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei. Um, I think we should say up front the title might sound a bit, maybe a little specific, but stick with us, because this book has ideas that are relevant to, well, really anyone, even if you're not particularly religious or familiar with, Islamic thought.
You're right. It is surprisingly relevant, especially now. I mean, think about it. We live in a world that is just completely flooded with information. And, a lot of it's just not true. And the book really gets into how to navigate that, how to find truth in all the noise.
Yeah, the book really digs into this idea of Jihad Al-Tabyeen. And now I know that might sound, well, kind of intense, but, bear with us.
Yeah, Jihad Al-Tabyeen is a big concept. It translates to the struggle for clarification. And Ayatollah Khamenei is basically saying that it's super important, especially for people who want to really understand what's going on in the world and make a positive impact.
Okay, so struggle for clarification. Help me out here. What exactly does that mean, for someone who is hearing this for the first time?
Okay, so think about it this way. Imagine the world is covered in this thick fog. You can't really see anything clearly. Tabyeen, that's like a light that cuts through all that fog. It helps you see what's real, what's actually true.
So it's about more than just, passively taking in whatever you hear.
Right. It's about actively going after the truth. And it's about making sure that other people can see it too. And I think, especially today, when there's so much misinformation and deception out there, Tabyeen is just so important.
It's like we're always being bombarded with information.
Yeah.
Online, on TV, everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's easy to just kind of get swept up in it all.
Absolutely. That's why Tabyeen is like a skill. It helps us to think critically, to see things clearly, like developing a strong moral compass.
Okay, so Tabyeen is important. But how does it actually work, in real life? Are there examples in the book that kind of show this in action?
Yeah, the book is full of them. It uses stories from Islamic history to illustrate these ideas.
Yeah.
Well, there's Prophet Muhammad. He was known for, communicating really complex ideas in a way that anyone could understand.
Right. And what about Imam Ali?
Imam Ali is another great example. He stood up for what he believed in, even when people were really against him. It was a very difficult time. And then, you can't forget the women. They were instrumental in preserving the truth, especially after the Battle of Karbala.
That's right. The women played such a critical role, even facing such difficult circumstances.
Yeah, and you see these people, these figures from history, and they show what it really means to commit to Tabyeen. They were brave, and they were willing to sacrifice a lot to uphold the truth. And I think their stories are still really relevant today.
It's like you can see how these same principles apply to the problems we face today, It's about fighting for what's right, even when it's hard.
Exactly. Think about all the times you've seen something false go viral online, or people who are struggling to get their voices heard because they're speaking truth to power. Those are all examples of why Tabyeen is so important right now.
Yeah, it's like a call to action, to think critically, to stand up for what you believe in, even to just be aware of how easily we can be misled. It's not just a historical thing. It's something we have to do today.
Exactly. Tabyeen is an ongoing struggle, and it starts with us looking inward. We have to strengthen our own understanding, become more aware of what influences us, and be willing to engage in dialogue, even with people who don't agree with us.
It reminds me of this quote from the book. Invite people using other than your tongues. The tongue can invite people, but the invitation by one's actions is better and stronger. It's about putting truth into action.
It's very powerful. And I think to really understand Tabyeen, it helps to understand Ayatollah Khamenei himself, his worldview.
Okay, so for someone who, doesn't know much about Ayatollah Khamenei, can you give us a little background? Who is he? What are his main ideas?
Well, Ayatollah Khamenei is a really important figure in contemporary Islamic thought. He believes that religion and politics are inseparable, and he has this vision for a society that's rooted in Islamic principles.
And I've heard he's really passionate about engaging with, young people.
Oh, absolutely. He sees young people as agents of change. They have the potential to transform the world.
Interesting. What about, the West?
Well, Ayatollah Khamenei is pretty critical of what he sees as negative Western influences. He believes we have to be careful not to be corrupted by things that he sees as harmful to society.
So he sees Tabyeen as a way to not just clarify truth, but also to, resist harmful influences.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it. And that's what makes this book so interesting. It gives you a glimpse into his worldview and how he sees Tabyeen as a way to address, the really complex challenges that we face in the world today. And, this whole idea of Kabun, it's not just about, speaking out against what's wrong. It's also about actually taking action to make the world a better place.
So it's about doing something, not just talking about it.
Exactly. He uses this really interesting example from the Quran about these prophets, right? They're fighting alongside all these people who believe in them. But even then, even with all that support, there still faces a ton of opposition.
It's a reminder that, even when you're doing the right thing, it's not always going to be easy.
Hmm.
Working for truth and justice can be really tough, especially when it feels like everyone's against you.
And that's why, Ayatollah Khamenei really emphasizes the importance of faith and spirituality. Because he's saying that when you have that strong inner foundation, it helps you to stay committed to the truth, even when things get really difficult.
Like building resilience, that inner strength to get through tough times and not compromise your values.
Yeah, exactly. And that inner strength, it gives you the courage to speak out against what's wrong and stand up for what's right. He has this great quote in the book. It's once you have understood the truth, it must be presented. No one expects you to speak against that which you have understood. The expectation is that you talk about what you have understood.
It's like, once you see the truth, you have to live it. Your actions have to match your beliefs. But honestly, with all the information out there these days, it can be really hard to even figure out what the truth is.
Yeah, and that's where this idea of basirat comes in. It's often translated as like insight or discernment. Ayatollah Khamenei really stresses how important it is to develop critical thinking skills. So you can see through all the propaganda and all the fake news and actually figure out what's real, even when people are trying really hard to hide it.
So it's like becoming a really smart consumer of information, right? Like
What?
learning how to figure out who to trust and what to believe.
Exactly. He uses this example from history, the Battle of Siffin. There were all these people who doubted Imam Ali's leadership because his opponents were using all these deceptive tactics to make him look bad.
So it's like you can't just look at the surface. You have to dig deeper to really understand what's going on.
Right. And it means being open to different perspectives, being willing to have conversations with people who think differently than you do. It's about getting out of your comfort zone and questioning your own assumptions.
It's so important to be able to have those tough conversations, right? To be open to ideas that might make you uncomfortable.
It's essential. And, Ayatollah Khamenei also talks a lot about how to communicate effectively, how to really get your message across when you're trying to share the truth. He says it's important to use language that's, logical, well-mannered, and appropriate for the people you're talking to.
So it's not just what you say, it's how you say it.
Exactly. He really criticizes people who use harsh language or are disrespectful, even when they're disagreeing with someone. He thinks we should always try to be polite and respectful because the way you communicate reflects what's going on inside of you.
It's like he's calling for a more civil and respectful way of talking to each other,
Mhm.
which, let's be honest, is pretty rare these days, especially when you look at how people talk to each other online or in politics.
It's true. And this idea of being mindful of your words, it goes beyond just public debates. He also talks about backbiting, talking about people behind their backs. He sees that as something that's really harmful and widespread. And he's saying that our words have power, even in private conversations.
It's easy to forget that, right? That negativity and gossip can really damage relationships and communities. We have to remember that our words matter, no matter who we're talking to.
Absolutely. And he takes it even further. He's saying that this applies to all forms of communication, like writing and social media. He's basically saying that we need to be responsible with our words, to think about the impact they might have. It's really easy with all the information overload these days to get caught up in all the negativity and misinformation.
So how do we deal with that? How do we stay grounded and focused on what's true?
Well, he acknowledges that it's a challenge, but he says that we have a responsibility to resist those forces and actively work to make the world a more truthful place. He talks about the importance of always learning and growing, always seeking out knowledge from reliable sources and refining your understanding.
So it's about being a lifelong learner, always trying to learn more and understand more deeply.
Right. And he also encourages people to engage with a wide range of thinkers and perspectives. He says that when you're exposed to different viewpoints, it helps you to understand things in a more nuanced way. He even suggests reading things outside of the Islamic tradition, which is interesting. He's really emphasizing the importance of being intellectually curious and open to new ideas.
It's cool that he's encouraging people to step outside of their comfort zones and explore different ways of thinking.
Yeah, and he sees a really important role for young people in this process. He talks about how important it is to help them develop their intellectual skills and become critical thinkers. It's like he's saying, hey, it's your turn now. You guys are the ones who are going to shape the future.
This reminds me of something else in the book that I found really fascinating. It's his analysis of the relationship between Iran and the West, particularly the United States. Kind of a touchy subject, but I think it's important to understand his perspective on this because it helps you to understand the book as a whole.
Yeah, it's a big part of his worldview. He's very critical of what he calls Western imperialism and the impact it's had on the world. He argues that Western powers are driven by this desire for power and control, and they often end up exploiting and harming other countries, especially in the Muslim world.
His critique is pretty sharp. It seems like he sees a fundamental clash between Western values and the values he believes in.
Yeah, he definitely sees a conflict there. And he specifically targets the United States, viewing it as kind of the embodiment of these negative forces. He points to its history of military intervention, supporting oppressive regimes and trying to undermine countries that challenge its power.
It's a controversial stance, but it's definitely something that people are talking about.
And he's also critical of people within Iran who want to compromise with the West. He sees that as naive and ultimately harmful because he thinks it just allows these negative forces to continue.
So he sees this as a battle of ideas, a clash between Islamic values and Western values.
That's a good way to put it. He doesn't think there's any middle ground. He's advocating for active resistance against what he sees as Western imperialism, both within Iran and around the world, and he uses historical examples to back up his arguments, showing how Iran has been hurt by Western interference in the past.
He specifically mentions the Iran nuclear deal, right? He was very critical of that.
Yeah, he saw it as a betrayal of Iran's interests and a form of appeasement that would weaken Iran and give the West more power to undermine the Islamic Republic. It's a good example of how he applies his ideology to real-world events.
So he's not just an academic, he's someone who's actually involved in shaping policy and trying to make his vision a reality.
Right. He believes that religious leaders have a duty to speak out against injustice and guide people towards what's right. And it shows how influential religious figures can be in shaping political debates and social movements.
It's clear that he sees himself as a protector of the revolution, someone who's trying to preserve its legacy and guide it towards its goals.
Absolutely. He believes that Iran has a unique role to play in the world. He sees it as a model for other Muslim nations, a symbol of hope in a world that's full of oppression and injustice.
It's like he's calling for a kind of Islamic awakening, a movement that challenges the way things are and creates a new world based on Islamic principles.
That's a central part of his ideology. He sees Iran as leading the way in this movement, showing other Muslim countries how to build a better future.
It's a bold vision, and it definitely appeals to people who are unhappy with the state of the world today.
But it's a vision that requires a lot of commitment and courage. He's calling for people to be willing to sacrifice for this cause. He urges his followers to stay true to their faith, to resist the temptations of materialism and Western culture, and to dedicate themselves to creating a more just and equitable world.
You can tell that he believes the stakes are high, and that this fight for a better future requires constant effort and vigilance.
And he puts a lot of emphasis on the role of young people in this struggle. He's constantly encouraging them to learn, to deepen their faith, and to get involved in shaping the kind of world they want to live in.
It's as if he's entrusting the future to them, putting the fate of the Islamic Republic and even the whole Muslim world in their hands.
Exactly. He's committed to inspiring and empowering them, preparing them to face the challenges that lie ahead. Even if you don't agree with everything he says, his message is undeniably powerful. His passion, his conviction, his unwavering belief in the power of faith to change the world. It's really striking.
And that belief is really at the heart of this book, Tabyeen, the Neglected Obligation. It's saying that even in a world that feels chaotic and uncertain, we have the power to make things better. But it takes effort. We have to be active, informed, and engaged.
It's a call to action. He's challenging us to contribute to the pursuit of truth, justice, and a world where everyone can live with dignity and freedom.
This book offers a really valuable glimpse into a way of thinking that's often misunderstood or misrepresented in the West. It's full of thought-provoking ideas that, while they come from a specific cultural context, have implications for anyone who's trying to make sense of our complex world.
He's encouraging us to question our assumptions, to think critically about the information we encounter, and to consider how we're shaping the narrative.
He's saying that we can't just be passive observers. We have to actively engage with the world around us and take responsibility for our choices.
Absolutely. And he reminds us that this isn't just about big political movements or abstract philosophies. It's about how we live our lives, how we treat other people, how we contribute to our communities.
So it's about finding ways to live out these principles in our everyday lives, even in small ways.
Exactly. He gives practical advice, like being a good example for others, treating people with kindness and respect, and always striving to do your best.
It seems like he believes that if we want to change the world, we have to start by changing ourselves.
Precisely. And he believes that personal transformation requires a strong moral foundation. He emphasizes developing qualities like honesty, trustworthiness, compassion, and humility.
It seems like those qualities are becoming more and more rare these days.
He's deeply concerned about what he sees as the moral decay of Western society, and he sees it as a threat to the whole world.
It all goes back to that clash of civilizations he talks about, the battle between what he sees as the spiritual values of Islam and the materialistic values of the West.
And he believes that it's ultimately a battle for the hearts and minds of all humanity.
That's a really profound idea. So how do we counter these negative forces? What can we do?
He puts a huge emphasis on education and cultural renewal. He believes that we need to rediscover the wisdom of our traditions, foster a love of knowledge, and develop a critical understanding of the forces that are shaping our world.
It's like he's saying that we need to arm ourselves with knowledge and wisdom in order to resist the allure of materialism and consumerism.
Exactly. And he also sees art and culture as playing a crucial role. He believes that they have the power to inspire, uplift, and transmit values across generations.
It's a good reminder of how powerful art can be in shaping how we see the world.
He encourages artists to use their talents to promote truth and beauty, to create works that reflect Islamic values, and inspire others to strive for excellence.
He's calling for a kind of artistic revolution, a movement that reclaims art from the grip of commercialization and superficiality and uses it as a tool for social and spiritual transformation.
And ultimately, he believes that this transformation starts within each of us. He urges us to engage in self-reflection, to purify our hearts and minds, and to cultivate a deeper connection with the divine.
It's a reminder that real change has to start from within, and that building a better world requires us to become better people ourselves.
It's a journey, a lifelong process of growth and self-improvement.
It's not about reaching some final destination, but about constantly evolving and trying to become the best versions of ourselves.
And he knows it's not easy. There will be challenges, setbacks, moments when you doubt yourself.
It's like climbing a mountain, you know? Sometimes it feels like you're never going to reach the top.
But he believes the rewards are worth it. He talks about the peace that comes from living in accordance with truth, the joy of being part of something bigger than yourself, and the hope for a future where humanity can fulfill its true potential.
It's a vision that gives you hope and encourages you to keep growing, both personally and collectively.
Tabyeen, the Neglected Obligation, really explores these ideas in depth. It's an invitation to think about how we can all contribute to making the world a more just and truthful place.
It's a call to action, a reminder that we all have a responsibility to make things better. Even if you don't agree with every single thing Ayatollah Khamenei says, you can't deny that he's dedicated to these principles, and that's inspiring no matter what your beliefs are.
It's a book that really makes you think. It encourages you to reflect on your own values and beliefs and to consider how you can apply the concept of tabyeen in your own life.
So if you're looking for a book that will challenge you, make you question your assumptions, and inspire you to get involved in making a difference, Tabyeen, the Neglected Obligation is definitely worth checking out.
And that's what the deep dive is all about. We hope this discussion has sparked your interest and given you some new insights.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a fascinating topic. Until then, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep working towards a better world. It's really powerful stuff. And, even if you don't agree with everything he says, you can't help but respect his commitment to these ideas.
Yeah, I think that's what makes this book so compelling. It's a challenge to all of us, It's asking us to really look at ourselves and think about how we can contribute to making the world a better place, and not just in some big abstract way, but in our everyday choices.
Right. It's about making those principles practical, finding ways to actually live them out.
Exactly. And he gives some really concrete examples of how to do that, like leading by example, being kind and respectful to others, always striving to do your best work.
It's like he's saying that if you want to change the world, you have to start by changing yourself.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. He really believes that personal transformation is the foundation for any kind of lasting social change. And for him, that transformation has to start with a strong moral compass. He talks about developing virtues like honesty, trustworthiness, compassion, humility.
Qualities that honestly feel like they're in short supply these days.
I know, right? And he's really worried about that. He sees what he calls the moral decay of Western society as a huge problem, not just for the West, but for the whole world.
It goes back to that clash of civilizations he talks about so much. The spiritual values of Islam versus the materialist values of the West.
Right, and he sees it as this battle for, like, the soul of humanity.
That's a pretty heavy way to put it.
Yeah.
Kind of makes you wonder how we're supposed to navigate all of this. It
Mm.
feels like a lot.
He actually offers a way forward. He talks a lot about the importance of education and cultural renewal. He says we need to rediscover the wisdom of our traditions, cultivate a love of learning, and develop a critical understanding of the forces that are shaping our world.
So, like, we need to arm ourselves with knowledge and wisdom if we want to resist the pull of materialism and consumerism.
Exactly. And he sees art and culture as playing a huge role in that, too. He thinks art has this incredible power to inspire, uplift, and pass on values to the next generation.
It's easy to forget how powerful art can be.
It really can change how we see the world. And he's calling on artists, to use their talents to promote truth and beauty, to create work that embodies Islamic values, that inspires people to reach for something higher.
It's like he's calling for an artistic revolution.
In a way, yeah. It's about reclaiming art from the forces of commercialization and superficiality and using it to transform society, to make it more spiritual.
Okay, so we need education, we need art. Where do we even start?
Well, he's pretty clear that it all begins with the individual. He encourages us to look inward, to purify our hearts and minds, to deepen our connection with the divine, whatever that means for each of us.
So real change starts on the inside. If we want to build a better world, we have to start by becoming better people.
That's the foundation. It's a lifelong journey. It's not about reaching some perfect state, but about constantly striving, constantly growing.
It's not about the destination. It's about the journey.
Exactly. And he acknowledges that it's not easy. There are going to be challenges, setbacks, times when you feel like giving up.
It's like climbing a mountain. There are going to be moments when you wonder if you'll ever reach the top.
But he's saying the rewards are worth it. He talks about the inner peace that comes from living in alignment with truth, the joy of being part of something bigger than yourself, the hope for a future where humanity can really reach its full potential.
It's a beautiful vision, and I think there's something really inspiring about that, even if you don't agree with every single point he makes.
Yeah, his commitment to truth, his faith, his belief in the power of human beings to create a better world, it's pretty remarkable.
So to wrap things up, Tabyeen the Neglected Obligation is a book that really pushes you to think. It's full of challenging ideas, but it's also deeply hopeful.
It's an invitation to look at the world in a new way, to question your assumptions, and to think about how you can make a positive impact.
It's a call to action, a reminder that we all have a responsibility to make the world a better place. And it all starts with us. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.